What if everything you were taught about money was designed to keep you poor? Not by accident, not by oversight, but by design, a design so old, so embedded in the fabric of society that most men never even think to question it. You were taught to work hard. You were taught to save. You were taught to get a good education, find a stable job, put money in a retirement account, and wait 40 years for the reward. You followed the rules. You did what you were told. And yet, here you are, searching, struggling, wondering why the formula is not working. The formula is not broken. The formula was never meant to make you wealthy. It was meant to make you useful, useful to the men who understand the one law that was deliberately left out of your education. This is that law. And once you understand it, you will see the world differently. You will see money differently. You will see your own life differently. Nothing will look the same, because you will finally understand the game that has been played around you, without you, your entire life. The one law of wealth that nobody tells you is this: money flows to those who solve problems at scale, not to those who work the hardest, not to those who sacrifice the most, not to those with the best degrees or the longest hours. Money flows, always and without exception, to those who solve problems for the greatest number of people. This single principle explains every fortune ever built. It explains why some men work 16 hours a day and die broke, while others work 4 hours and build empires. It explains why your salary has a ceiling while an entrepreneur's income has none. It explains everything once you see it. And in the next 40 minutes, I am going to make sure you see it so clearly that you can never unsee it again. Let me show you. Consider the man who works in a factory. He wakes at dawn. He commutes an hour. He stands on his feet for 8, 10, 12 hours, performing the same task over and over until his body aches and his mind goes numb. He does this 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year, for 40 years. He is solving a problem. The factory needs labor, and he provides it. But how many people does his labor serve? Perhaps the output of his hands reaches a few hundred customers, perhaps a few thousand. His contribution, while real, is limited by the hours in his day and the strength in his body. Now consider the man who owns the factory. He may work fewer hours, he may never touch the machinery, but he solved a different problem, a bigger problem. He figured out how to organize labor, capital, and materials to produce goods that serve millions. His solution scales. It reaches beyond his personal effort. It multiplies. Both men work. But one is solving problems at the scale of dozens. The other is solving problems at the scale of millions. Which one becomes wealthy? The answer is obvious, and it has nothing to do with fairness, nothing to do with merit in the moral sense, nothing to do with who deserves more. It is simply the law, as impersonal as gravity, as reliable as sunrise. Money flows to those who solve problems at scale. The moment you understand this, you stop asking, "How can I work harder?" and start asking, "How can I solve bigger problems for more people?" That question, that single shift in thinking, is worth more than any degree, any certification, any credential the traditional system can offer you. Let me tell you how I discovered this law. It was not taught to me. It was not handed down by a wealthy father or a privileged education. I arrived in America at 13 years old with nothing. No money, no connections, no language skills, no advantages of any kind. My first job was in a cotton factory. I worked 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, for $1.20 per week. I was solving a problem. The factory needed a bobbin boy, and I filled that role. But the problem I was solving was small. My labor touched perhaps a few hundred pounds of cotton. My contribution was real, but it was limited to what my 2 hands could accomplish in a day. I watched the men around me. They had been there for years, some for decades. They worked harder than I did. Their hands were calloused, their backs bent from labor. But they were not wealthy. They would never be wealthy. And I began to wonder why. The answer came slowly, then all at once. The owner of that factory did not work harder than the men on the floor. In many ways, he worked less, but he had solved a different problem. He had figured out how to organize dozens of workers, how to source materials, how to sell the finished product to customers across the region. His solution touched thousands of lives, and so the money flowed to him. I made a decision in that factory that changed the trajectory of my life. I decided that I would not spend my years solving small problems. I would learn to solve big ones. This did not happen overnight. I was still a bobbin boy. I still earned $1.20 per week. But my mind was different. I started asking different questions. Instead of, how do I do my job better? I asked, how does this whole operation work? Instead of, how do I get a raise? I asked, how do I become so valuable that opportunities find me? Within a year, I had moved from the factory floor to the office. Within 3 years, I was working for the railroad, the most powerful industry in America. Within a decade, I was making investments. Within 2 decades, I was building the largest steel company the world had ever seen. The progression was not random. It was the result of understanding one law and applying it relentlessly. Money flows to those who solve problems at scale. At each stage, I asked myself, how can I solve a bigger problem? How can I serve more people? How can I create more value? The answers to those questions built an empire. Now let me show you how this law operates in ways most men never see. Consider the doctor who works in a small practice. He is highly educated. He spent a decade in training. He is skilled, dedicated, and genuinely helpful to his patients. He solves an important problem. People are sick, and he heals them. But how many patients can one doctor see in a day? 20, 30, perhaps 50 if he works himself to exhaustion. His income is capped by his time. He trades hours for dollars, and there are only so many hours. Now consider the doctor who creates a medical device that helps millions of patients, or the one who builds a hospital system that employs hundreds of doctors, or the one who develops a treatment protocol that becomes the standard of care worldwide. Same profession, same skills. But one solves problems at the scale of dozens. The other solves problems at the scale of millions. The law does not care about credentials. It does not care about effort. It does not care about intentions. It only asks, how many people did you serve? How big was the problem you solved? How much value did you create? Answer those questions, and you will know why money flows where it flows. Here is where most men fail. They understand the law intellectually. They nod their heads. They agree that scale matters. But then they return to their lives and continue solving small problems. Why? Because solving big problems is frightening. Solving small problems is safe. You know the boundaries. You know the expectations. You trade your time for a predictable paycheck, and the predictability feels like security. Solving big problems is uncertain. You might fail. You might be rejected. You might invest years into something that does not work. The unpredictability feels like danger, and so most men choose the safety of small problems. They choose the ceiling. They choose the cage, because the cage is familiar and the open sky is terrifying. But here is what they do not understand. The cage is not safe. It only feels safe. The man who trades hours for dollars is one illness away from poverty, one layoff away from crisis, one economic shift away from irrelevance. He has no assets, no leverage, no security that does not depend on his continued ability to show up and trade time for money. The man who solves problems at scale, who builds systems, who creates assets, who serves millions, he has true security. His income does not depend on his presence. His wealth does not evaporate when he stops working. He has built something that exists independent of his daily effort. The cage is not safety. It is the illusion of safety. And most men do not discover this until it is too late. Let me tell you about a man I knew in Pittsburgh, a man whose story illustrates this law perfectly. His name was Thomas. He worked as a clerk in a railroad office. He was competent, reliable, honest. He showed up early, stayed late, and never complained. By every measure of traditional success, he was doing everything right. But Thomas had a problem. He was solving small problems. His work touched a few dozen people, his supervisor, his colleagues, the customers who came through the office. His contribution was real, but it was limited. I watched Thomas for 2 years. I saw his frustration grow as his salary remained stagnant. I saw him wonder why others were advancing while he remained in place. I saw him blame the company, the economy, his lack of connections. One day he asked me directly, "Mr. Carnegie, why do some men rise while others remain stuck? I work harder than most. I am more reliable than most. Why am I not rewarded?" I told him the truth, the same truth I am telling you now. Thomas, you are being rewarded. You are being rewarded in exact proportion to the size of the problem you solve. You solve a small problem, the problem of one clerk's position, and you are paid accordingly. If you want to be paid more, you must solve bigger problems. He looked at me, confused. But how? I am just a clerk. I do not have the authority to solve bigger problems. This is the objection every man raises. I do not have the authority. I do not have the resources. I do not have the opportunity. But this objection is a lie we tell ourselves to avoid the terror of expansion. I told Thomas, you do not need authority to see problems. You do not need resources to propose solutions. Look around this office. Look at the inefficiencies, the bottlenecks, the frustrations. Find a problem that affects not just yourself, but dozens of people. Find a solution. Present it. If you are right, you will be rewarded. If you are wrong, you will have learned something. Either way, you will have expanded beyond the cage of your current position. Thomas took my advice. He spent his evenings studying the operations of the railroad, not just his corner, but the whole system. He identified a scheduling inefficiency that was costing the company thousands of dollars per month. He developed a solution. He presented it to the superintendent. Within 6 months, Thomas was promoted. Within 2 years, he was managing an entire division. Within a decade, he owned his own logistics company. The same man, the same skills, the same work ethic, but he stopped solving small problems and started solving big ones. And the money followed, as it always does, as it always will. Let me show you another example, one that will make this law even clearer. Consider 2 men who start restaurants in the same city in the same year. The first man opens a small diner. He cooks the food himself. He serves the customers himself. He cleans the floors himself. He works 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. He is exhausted, but he is proud. He is a business owner now. But what problem is he solving? He feeds perhaps 50 customers a day. His solution is local, personal, limited by his own 2 hands and the hours in his day. The second man opens a restaurant with a different vision. From day one, he is not thinking about cooking. He is thinking about systems. He develops recipes that can be replicated. He trains cooks to prepare food exactly as he would. He creates processes for service, for ordering, for quality control. Within a year, he opens a second location. Within 5 years, he has 10. Within 20 years, his restaurants feed millions of customers across the country. Same industry, same starting point. But one man solved a small problem, feeding 50 people a day. The other solved a big problem, creating a system that feeds millions. The first man will work until his body breaks and retire with modest savings. The second man will build generational wealth and spend his later years in freedom. This is not about restaurants. This is about thinking. The first man thought like a cook. The second man thought like an empire builder. And their results reflect their thinking perfectly. What are you thinking like? A cook, trading your personal effort for daily wages, or an empire builder, creating systems that serve millions? The answer to that question will determine everything. Now here is the part that most men are not ready to hear. Solving big problems requires you to become a bigger person. You cannot solve $1 million problem with a $1,000 mindset. You cannot serve millions of people while thinking like someone who serves dozens. The size of your problems is limited by the size of your thinking. This is why most men remain stuck. Not because they lack opportunity, but because they lack capacity. They have not expanded their minds to see bigger problems, their skills to solve bigger problems, their courage to attempt bigger problems. And this expansion does not happen by accident. It happens through deliberate, relentless self-development. Read what the wealthy read. Study what the wealthy study. Think how the wealthy think. Not to imitate them blindly, but to expand your capacity to see what they see. A man who has never studied business cannot see business opportunities. They pass by him daily, invisible, because he lacks the mental framework to recognize them. A man who has never studied finance cannot see financial opportunities. The same numbers that reveal fortunes to the trained eye look like meaningless data to him. A man who has never studied human nature cannot see where people need solutions. He is blind to the problems that surround him, and therefore blind to the wealth those problems represent. Your income is a reflection of your value, and your value is a reflection of your capacity. Expand your capacity, and your value expands. Expand your value, and your income expands. The chain is unbreakable. Let me give you another dimension of this law that most men miss entirely. Money does not just flow to those who solve problems. It flows to those who solve problems other people cannot or will not solve. This is the principle of scarcity, and it multiplies the basic law exponentially. If you solve a problem that anyone can solve, you will be paid poorly. There is nothing special about your contribution. 100 other men could replace you tomorrow, but if you solve a problem that few can solve because it requires rare skills, rare knowledge, rare courage, or rare vision, you will be paid extraordinarily. Your contribution is irreplaceable. You have leverage. This is why doctors earn more than clerks. The problem they solve, healing the sick, requires rare skills that take years to develop. The supply of people who can solve that problem is limited. This is why entrepreneurs earn more than employees. The problem they solve, organizing resources to create value at scale, requires rare courage and vision. Most men are unwilling to take the risk. This is why leaders earn more than followers. The problem they solve, guiding others toward a common goal, requires rare abilities that most men never develop. If you want extraordinary wealth, you must solve problems that are both large in scale and rare in solution. This is the formula. Scale times. Scarcity equals wealth. Solve a common problem for a few people. Poverty. Solve a common problem for millions. Modest success. Solve a rare problem for a few people. Comfortable living. Solve a rare problem for millions. Empire. Every fortune in history fits this formula. Every fortune you will ever build will fit this formula. There are no exceptions. Let me make this even more concrete. Think about the wealthiest men of this era, not those who inherited, but those who built. What problems did they solve, and at what scale? The men who built the railroads solved the problem of transportation across a vast continent. Millions of people needed to move goods, to travel, to connect with distant markets. The railroad solved that problem at scale, and the men who built it became fabulously wealthy, not because they worked harder than the laborers who laid the track, but because they solved a bigger problem. The men who built the telegraph solved the problem of communication across distance. Before the telegraph, a message from New York to San Francisco took weeks. After the telegraph, it took minutes. Millions of businesses, millions of families, millions of decisions depended on fast communication. The men who provided it became wealthy beyond imagination. The men who built the steel industry, and I include myself among them, solved the problem of building materials for a growing nation. Bridges, buildings, railroads, machines, all required steel. We figured out how to produce it cheaper, faster, and better than anyone else. We served millions of customers, and the money flowed accordingly. Look at any fortune in any era, and you will find the same pattern, a problem that affects millions, a solution that serves at scale, and wealth that flows to those who provide it. This is not theory. This is observation. This is the law operating in plain sight for anyone who has eyes to see it. So how do you apply this law practically? Let me give you the method, not theory, but execution. First, identify the biggest problems in your sphere of influence. Do not look for problems you can solve easily. Look for problems that make you uncomfortable, problems that seem too big, too complex, too far above your current position. Those are the problems that will elevate you. In your workplace, what frustrates everyone? What costs the company money? What drives customers away? What inefficiency does everyone complain about, but no one fixes? In your industry, what is changing? What do customers want that they cannot get? What gap exists between what is offered and what is needed? In the world, what suffering exists that you have the skills to address? What need goes unmet? What problem is waiting for someone with exactly your background to solve it? Write these problems down, study them, become obsessed with them. The man who understands a problem deeply is halfway to solving it. Second, develop the skills required to solve those problems. If you lack knowledge, acquire knowledge. If you lack skills, develop skills. If you lack connections, build connections. This is not passive. This is aggressive, deliberate self-construction. You are not waiting for opportunity. You are building yourself into the kind of person who can seize opportunity when it appears. Every book you read, every skill you practice, every relationship you build is an investment in your capacity to solve bigger problems. Treat your self-development with the same seriousness you would treat a financial investment, because it is the highest return investment you will ever make. Third, propose solutions before you are asked. Do not wait for permission. Do not wait for authority. Do not wait for someone to notice your potential. See the problem. Develop the solution. Present it. Take initiative. Most men wait to be chosen. The Titan chooses himself. He acts before he is ready, speaks before he is asked, solves before he is hired. And because he does what others will not, he receives what others cannot. Fourth, scale your solutions systematically. Once you solve a problem successfully, ask, how can I solve this same problem for more people? If you solve it for one customer, can you solve it for 10? If you solve it for 10, can you solve it for 100? If you solve it for 100, can you solve it for 1,000? This is the difference between income and wealth. Income comes from solving problems once. Wealth comes from solving problems repeatedly, systematically, at scale. Build systems, create processes, develop products, train others to deliver your solution. Remove yourself from the equation so the solution can multiply beyond your personal effort. This is how empires are built, one scaled solution at a time. Fifth, reinvest your returns into bigger problems. When the money begins to flow, and it will, do not consume it. Reinvest it. Use your returns to develop more skills, to access bigger opportunities, to solve even larger problems. Let the compound effect work in your favor. Most men, when they taste success, immediately upgrade their lifestyle. They buy the car, the house, the symbols of wealth, and in doing so, they trap themselves at their current level. The Titan reinvests. He lives below his means not out of deprivation, but out of strategy. He knows that every dollar reinvested is a soldier sent to conquer new territory. He delays gratification today so he can have freedom tomorrow. Let me tell you about the moment this law became undeniable to me. It was 1873. I had been building my steel business for several years. We were successful, but not dominant. There were dozens of steel companies in America, all competing for the same customers. Then the financial panic hit. Banks collapsed. Businesses failed. Men who had been wealthy in the morning were ruined by evening. It was chaos, and in chaos, most men see only danger. But I saw something else. I saw opportunity. While my competitors were panicking, selling assets at pennies on the dollar, retreating from the market, I was buying. I purchased equipment, facilities, even entire companies from desperate sellers. I invested when everyone else was divesting. Why? Because I understood the law. The panic had created a problem, a massive problem that affected the entire industry. Most men ran from the problem. I ran toward it. I asked, how can I solve this problem at scale? The solution was consolidation. By acquiring distressed assets, I could create efficiencies that no smaller company could match. I could reduce costs, increase quality, and serve more customers at lower prices. I could solve the problem of expensive, unreliable steel for millions of customers across America. Within 5 years, my company was the largest steel producer in the world. Within 2 decades, I would sell it for $480 million, the largest business transaction in history at that time. The fortune was not built by working harder than my competitors. It was built by solving a bigger problem, by seeing what others feared to see, by acting when others were paralyzed. This is the law in action, and it is available to anyone who has the courage to apply it. Now let me address the objection that is forming in your mind. Carnegie, this is easy for you to say. You built your fortune in a different era. There were opportunities then that do not exist now. The game has changed. The game has not changed. The game has never changed. The law is as true today as it was in 1870, as it was in ancient Rome, as it will be 1,000 years from now. Money flows to those who solve problems at scale. The tools change, the industries change, the specific opportunities change, but the law remains constant. In my era, the big problems were infrastructure, manufacturing, transportation. Today, the big problems are different: technology, healthcare, education, energy, connection. But they are still problems, and they still need solving. The man who learns to see these problems, who develops the skills to address them, who has the courage to act, he will build wealth in any era, under any circumstances, regardless of where he starts. Do not use the era as an excuse. The era is not your obstacle. Your thinking is your obstacle. Expand your thinking, and the era becomes your opportunity. There is another objection I must address. Carnegie, I am not an entrepreneur. I work for someone else. How does this law apply to me? It applies completely. The law does not distinguish between entrepreneurs and employees. It only measures the size of the problem you solve. If you are an employee, you are solving problems for your employer. The question is, how big are those problems? The employee who solves small problems, filing papers, answering phones, completing assigned tasks, will always earn small wages. He is replaceable. His contribution is limited. But the employee who solves big problems, who increases revenue, who reduces costs, who opens new markets, who makes the entire organization more effective. That employee becomes invaluable. He cannot be replaced. His contribution is recognized, and he is compensated accordingly. I have seen clerks become executives. I have seen factory workers become foremen, then managers, then owners of their own enterprises. In every case, the pattern was the same. They stopped solving small problems and started solving big ones. You do not need to start a business to apply this law. You need to start thinking bigger within whatever context you currently occupy. Find the biggest problem you can address. Solve it. Then find a bigger one. The promotions will come. The opportunities will come. The money will come. It has no choice, because you will have made yourself too valuable to ignore. Let me tell you about another trap that catches many men who understand this law intellectually but fail to apply it. They try to solve big problems without first proving they can solve small ones. This is arrogance disguised as ambition, and it leads to failure. Before you can solve problems for millions, you must prove you can solve problems for dozens. Before you can lead an army, you must prove you can lead a squad. Before you can build an empire, you must prove you can build a single successful operation. This is the principle of progressive expansion. You do not leap from small to massive. You grow through stages, each stage proving your capacity, developing your skills, earning the trust required for the next level. When I was a bobbin boy, I did not attempt to run the factory. I mastered my small role first. I proved that I could solve small problems with excellence. Only then was I given larger problems to solve. When I worked for the railroad, I did not attempt to become president on my first day. I proved myself at each level: telegraph operator, then superintendent's assistant, then division manager. Each role was a test, and each test passed opened doors to larger problems. This is not timidity. This is strategy. You build credibility by demonstrating competence. You earn the right to solve big problems by excelling at smaller ones first. If you are currently solving small problems, do not despise your position. Excel at it. Master it. Prove that you can be trusted with more. The expansion will come, but it must be earned. I want to speak directly to you now, you who have listened this far. You are not here by accident. Something in you recognized this truth before I spoke it. Something in you has always known that the traditional path was not going to deliver what you truly want. You have been solving small problems, not because you lack the ability to solve big ones, but because no one ever told you that you were allowed to try. No one ever gave you permission to think bigger, to reach higher, to become the kind of person who solves problems for millions. I am giving you that permission now. You are allowed to solve big problems. You are allowed to build wealth. You are allowed to rise so far beyond your current circumstances that the person you are today would not recognize the person you become. But permission is not enough. Permission is just the beginning. What comes next is action. You must take the law I have given you and apply it. Not tomorrow. Not when conditions are perfect. Now, while the fire is still burning in your chest, while the truth is still fresh in your mind. Ask yourself tonight, what is the biggest problem I can solve? What problem, if I solved it, would affect the most people? What would I need to learn, to develop, to become in order to solve that problem? Write the answers down. Study them. Commit to them. Let them become the organizing principle of your life. And then begin, one step at a time, one skill at a time, one solution at a time. The path will not be easy. It will not be quick. There will be failures, setbacks, moments when you question everything. But if you hold to the law, if you keep asking, how can I solve bigger problems for more people? The money will come. The wealth will come. The life you are meant to live will come. This is not hope. This is not motivation. This is mathematics. It is the architecture of wealth that has built every fortune in human history. Most men will hear this law and do nothing. They will agree with every word. They will feel inspired for a moment. And then they will return to their small problems, their small thinking, their small lives. They will continue trading hours for dollars, wondering why the formula does not work, blaming the system instead of examining themselves. That is their choice. And the consequences of that choice are their own to bear. But you do not have to make that choice. You can decide right now that you will never see the world the same way again, that you will never again accept the ceiling that others have placed on your potential, that you will spend the rest of your life solving bigger and bigger problems, serving more and more people, creating more and more value. That decision, that single shift in orientation, is worth more than any inheritance, any lottery, any stroke of luck. Because luck can be lost. Inheritance can be squandered. But the ability to solve problems at scale cannot be taken from you. It is yours forever, compounding daily, building toward a fortune that most men cannot even imagine. The wealthy do not guard their money, they guard their knowledge. And now you have the knowledge they guard most closely. Use it. Let me leave you with this. Every morning, you wake up and face a choice. You can solve small problems, the problems that are safe, familiar, comfortable. Or you can solve big problems, the problems that frighten you, challenge you, expand you. The choice you make determines everything: your income, your wealth, your legacy, the life you lead, and the life you leave behind. Most men choose small problems. They live small lives. They die with their potential intact, never having used it, never having tested it, never having discovered what they were truly capable of. But you are not most men. You cannot be, because you have heard the law, and the law cannot be unheard. Money flows to those who solve problems at scale. This is the one law of wealth that nobody tells you. Now you know it. Now you have no excuse. Now the only question is, what will you do with it? The vault is open. The law is yours. Go solve a problem worth solving. One final word. Return to this message. Not once, not twice, until the law becomes so embedded in your thinking that you cannot see the world any other way. Every morning, ask yourself, what is the biggest problem I can solve today? Every evening, ask yourself, did I expand my capacity to solve bigger problems? Make these questions your ritual. Make this law your operating system. Make problem-solving at scale your identity, not just something you do, but who you are. The men who built empires did not have secret advantages. They had this law, applied relentlessly, over years and decades. They saw problems where others saw obstacles. They saw opportunity where others saw chaos. They built solutions where others built excuses. You have the same law now. You have the same opportunity. The only question that remains is whether you will use it. Say this to yourself and mean it. I solve problems at scale. I create value for millions. I am not limited by my current position. I am expanding toward my potential. Every day I grow. Every day I serve more people. Every day I move closer to the fortune that is waiting for me. Speak those words until they become true. Act on them until they become undeniable. Live them until the life you have today is unrecognizable from the life you are building. The vault is open. The law is yours. Now go build something worthy of it.